Hey everybody, Farand Wasiak, host of the IACIS podcast. I'm here with Philip Muchinsky from Prescott Valley, Arizona. Philip, how you doing this afternoon?
Good.
Good. Philip, you're the chair for IACIS's RCA class, a RAM capture analysis class, correct?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit about yourself, the history of Philip.
Sure. So, history of Philip. I don't even know what's interesting to say.
Who do you work for?
So I work
day job.
I currently work for the Prescott Valley Police Department.
Okay.
This is my 20th year in
20th
law
year.
enforcement.
Yep.
So I started back in 2006 after finishing university.
Okay.
And originally actually started with the Flagstaff Police Department.
Okay.
Did about a little over 6 years there. Primarily worked in specializing in things like collision reconstruction, traffic, was a motorcycle officer for a while there, those sorts of things. To my background from school, it really kind of fit. So that's how I started my career, investigating a lot of injury, fatal accidents, that sort of thing, while working on patrol as we often start.
Yep.
Then about 2012, lateraled down to the Prescott Valley Police Department, where I still currently work. Did a couple years on patrol there, continuing working, doing collisions and things like that before promoting to our criminal investigation section.
Okay.
So in 2014, became a detective. And that's also shortly after there where my forensic career started. In 2014, when I started there, I was the new guy, right? The new to investigations. You don't know what you're doing. You're taking cases and you're doing your best to learn and work through them. And it wasn't too long after I started that I caught my first couple of cases that were related to digital forensics. Sure. I didn't know that at the time, but you don't know what you don't know. And I won't go into the details of the stories, but one of them was like a young lady that she had been sexually assaulted at a party, and she had communications between her and the suspect on her cell phone.
Right.
So, trying to do the best I can for the victim, I took the phone and didn't know what I was doing, but took it to one of the senior investigators that was mentoring me and said, how do I get these off of the phone? And he said, well, you take pictures of it. And at the time, not knowing much, I just thought to myself, well, there's got to be a better way to do this.
Sure.
And so I went to our evidence supervisor at the time and I said, do we have some way to download these off of the phone? And he said, well, we have this software over here, but nobody knows how to use it. And we had gotten at that time SecureView on a grant.
Yep.
And so it was sitting there. And, I wasn't really I thought I was a computer guy at the time as a hobby and didn't realize, of course, how much I didn't know.
Right.
But it was a hobby, right? Like I sold computers in a retail store. When I was going to college, I needed a computer, so I built one, that sort of thing.
Sure.
And so I installed SecureView, started playing with it and realized it wasn't that complicated. It wasn't that hard. It was a pretty easy tool at that time. So I downloaded the victim's phone, and one thing led to another. And then a couple months later, I caught my first couple of CSAM investigations that I was assigned. And one of those CSAM investigations I found very frustrating because the suspect at that time happened to be a bus driver for our local school district.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yep.
But at the time, we didn't have the ability to triage, to image RAM, so we did what we knew, which was just unplug and take everything with us.
Yeah.
So we did that, and then we take everything and we send it to our state lab. And our state lab, they did a great job. They're a great resource. They do a wonderful job. Lots of experience there, but as is the typical problem with many state labs, their backlog was significant, so it took 6 months to a year to get anything back.
Yep.
So in the meantime, for 6 months to a year, this guy's out because I can't charge him, which I found very frustrating.
Was he still driving buses?
Yes.
Okay, wow.
So he's out and about until then. And it was about that point I decided something's got to change.
Yeah.
Right? And it was just more or less from the standpoint of somebody at least needs to know how to properly identify and collect this stuff so that we can do something, right, to get these cases going. So that was the beginning of 2015. And I kind of muddled my way through it, finding free classes, NW3C at the beginning was great. They were awesome at the beginning, taking some classes, just did anything I could. And so I muddled through 2015, had some success over the next few months. And as I had a little bit more success, working regular criminal investigations and then trying to do this forensic thing on the side when there was time, some of the other investigators realized that if they took devices, we might actually be able to do something with them. And it was kind of the snowball effect. They had never been taking devices because if they took them, they'd send them to the lab, they'd wait a year to get them back.
Right.
And by then they figured it was worthless. And so as I started having a little bit of success, they started taking more. So that first year, you only do like 12 or 15 phones or something like that. You get into half of them at the time just because of the capabilities and training. And so by the end of 2015, I realized that this was something we really needed, and it wasn't going away. And so that's kind of how I presented it to our administration.
Yep.
I went to our administration and said, I'd like to get this program going. I'd like to keep it around. I think it's important. Fortunately, from my department, I have a lot of support, always have from the beginning. And so they said, we'll go ahead and put together a proposal of what you need to really get this going, and we'll see what we can do. And so it was more or less a wish list to just kind of get it going. At the time, of course, I didn't know anything, but I was very fortunate in that many of you in IACIS know Gene Shantz.
Sure, yep.
I used to work with Gene at Flagstaff PD back when he still worked in law enforcement. Gene's a good friend, used to be my boss. And so I call up Gene and I just asked him, I said, hey, can you give me some ideas on how to get this thing going? And he was gracious enough to just give me some pointers on kind of how to directions I may want to research and go in. Was gracious enough not to, obviously he can't give me the formula or the secret sauce or anything like that. There's nothing to really give there, but more or less these are the different areas you need to look at, things that may or may not work for you in your department. It's great. So took that, put it together. Long story short, the department ended up giving me about, they gave me enough to at least get my first forensic workstation and buy forensic software, which was X-Ways at the time.
Yep. Oh my God.
And then I was also able to go to week-long X-Ways training from X-Ways, and it was enough to send me here to IACIS to take the BCFE.
Okay.
Which starts my IACIS journey as well.
So how, back then or today, how many people are in your lab, in your department?
So currently we're actually very fortunate for the size department and lab that we are. So our department is only about 89 sworn. And so I work in the lab full time. I also have a civilian examiner that works for us full time, who does a fantastic job. He's actually a medically retired officer for us.
Okay.
So he knows both sides of it, which is great. And then we actually have a federal CFA assigned in our lab as well.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
So he sits right next to us working as well. And so in terms of growth for our area, we're actually in the process of trying to turn our lab into a regional lab for our county.
Okay. Yeah. Good. I notice a lot of departments do that though. It's to counteract, like you said, the 6-month backlog, the 1-year backlog. Counties will make their own little task force, or so they sort of, if you want to be part of it, you gotta put some skin in the game. You have to help with licenses and stuff. But the turnaround's a lot better.
Well, the turnaround's better. The buy-in is better. And this is common in a lot of areas, but specific to ours, we have 13 law enforcement agencies in our county. And area-wise, it's very large.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
We're about 8,200 square miles.
Yeah.
About 250,000 people. And we're about an hour and a half north of the Phoenix metropolitan area, We're up in the mountains of Arizona, so I like to say it's the good part of Arizona where we have trees and you get snow.
Yeah, you get some seasons in there.
Oh, yeah. So it's a beautiful area, but it's a little bit rural. And so part of the challenge that we sometimes run into is a lot of the departments, the largest department in our area is about 140 sworn.
Okay.
And so it's a challenge for any one of the departments to have a very robust program themselves. And so if a department has a program, they have typically one examiner. And so that's always a challenge just from resources and equipment and also knowledge transfer.
Right.
Because commonly what we see happen is an examiner, they come in, they get trained up, they get a lot of experience, and then they may promote or be transferred to something else, and then all of that experience goes with them.
Yep.
And it's very rare that a department is able to bring in another new examiner to learn over any length of time, because it takes a year or two to really train a competent
100%.
examiner and get a lot of that experience transferred. So part of the other reason for resource sharing we're looking at is also just that longevity and transfer of experience and knowledge that is pretty difficult to put a price on.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's true. And that's a global issue. That
Absolutely.
That happens. Yeah. That happens absolutely wherever you are on this rock. You're going to have that problem if you're in our industry. So you got sent to IACIS. So you're a student BCFE, and where do you go from I'm a student to chairing, a very popular IACIS class?
So 2016, back when it was at Lake Mary, I came down here as a student. That was my first experience here. It was great. I loved it. The training was more than I really could have asked for at the time.
Sure.
So went back, struggled through my CFCE like many people did, but was successful. And then ended up in 2017 coming right back to the MDF class.
Okay.
It's one of the early MDF classes, and beginning of 2017, and so then went back and ended up completing the ICMDE as well in 2017. So did all that, was continuing to build our lab, build our program, going to additional trainings as well. Many are familiar with the NCFI and those types of programs, so spent a lot of time down there as well. And then took a year off more or less, and then 2019 came back and started my volunteering, and by being a peer coach, peer review coach. So I started peer review coaching in 2019, did that for a couple of years and continued that. And then in 2021, had my first opportunity to come down here and volunteer as staff as a row coach for the BCFE.
Okay. That was my first year here. Okay, so, nice.
So 2021 came down here, first year, was a row coach in the room here. Came down here for the train the trainer, and that first year also helped teach a block up on stage.
Good.
Which was great. It was an experience. I'd never really done that type of teaching before. Had taught some before, the police academies and firearms and that sort of thing. But teaching a technical topic like this, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
So came down and did that. Came back in 22 as well, and then again in 23. And so then in 23, I also came down here to Florida, of course, for the BCFE, but then came back and was graciously invited to, I was very excited for the first time I got to actually go do the Olaf event in Prague.
Oh, wow.
In 2023. So went to Prague and did the European event there, which was a fantastic experience. Something like 70 students from all over Europe and the world. Yeah. It was really, really cool experience just to meet everybody and get to share that from people around the world. And then 24, I came back, and that's when I was asked by Kevin Adore to go over and help him with his specialized class. He was the RCA chair at that time. So went and helped him as the RCA chair, working through the class. I had never been through the class, so it was an interesting experience, but not too bad, and helped him work through that, almost like a row coach in BCFE. Sure, you're helping the students and keeping them along. But of course, there's only 2 or 3 of you in there, and so it's a little busier.
Sure, yeah.
It's a little busier to say the least, but I loved the class. It was chaotic. We break things, but it's very valuable. And so then 24, I was very fortunate that I got to go to our Australian event.
All over the world.
Yeah, and so Australian event, and met some great people there too, and went and taught at the Australian event. And then came back in 25 and taught RCA with Kevin again here in Orlando. And then last year in 25 did our first Budapest event separate from Olaf as well. So I've had some great experiences, made a lot of friends all over the world with IACIS. And then last year after the RCA class that I did with Kevin, At that point, I was asked to take over as share. So
Nice. That's IACIS only brings me to Orlando and Milwaukee. So you got a good, you got to get the stickers of the places you've been and stick them on your suitcase like the old shows, the shows from the 70s and the cartoons.
I've been very fortunate.
Yeah.
It's been a great experience, and I've been able to make friends all over the world and know examiners everywhere. So
that's pretty good. Let's dive into RAM capturing. So the importance of it. Now, I'm not the world's expert in RAM capture analysis. I have you got a machine that's on, you capture FTK imager, right? So that seems to be the classic thing here. Hopefully you'll get what information you want from it before that machine goes dead or anything like that. So generally you just dump the RAM, as we say, using FTK imager to an external hard drive. What is the importance of actually capturing the RAM, the information that's there, the volatile information that's there?
Sure.
What are some important things we have to look for?
So part of the importance of RAM and why the RAM capture analysis class came to exist in the first place is several things. So RAM being volatile information is very important, but sometimes the thing that gets forgotten is that in a computer that's running, everything in the computer that happens has to go through RAM.
RAM, right.
Every keystroke, every mouse click, every program, every handle, every network connection, it all has to traverse RAM. I mean, have you ever tried to pull your RAM out of a computer and boot it up?
Right,
It won't function,
correct,
right?
correct.
So RAM, everything goes through RAM. And so you can and typically your RAM also holds your most recent information as well.
Yes.
And so, plus, as you mentioned, it's volatile. So once we take that computer offline, once we shut it down, any of the information that's in RAM is gone. It doesn't exist anymore.
Yep.
And for a long time, that was acceptable in given some of the conditions that we were dealing with in collecting things live. The problem is multifold, right? So RAM has gotten to sizes where you're talking, your typical laptop has at least 16 gigs of RAM.
Minimum, yeah.
32, 64 is not uncommon. Even sometimes you get 128.
Yep.
It's a lot of information. It's a lot of data. It's a lot of the most pertinent data and information. And so part of the reason we do this class is to understand a lot of different things, but the information that's held up there in RAM, those artifacts can, one, help make your case, but also two, one of the big things that we use it to focus on in the class as well is things like encryption and passwords as well,
Yes.
which have become a huge problem for many examiners and investigators. How do you get to the information? And RAM is one of the best ways to do that, outside of having a password. of course.
Right. How often do the bad guys give us that, though?
So, I mean, sometimes they do.
Sometimes.
But if you ask,
right.
You have to ask. But capturing the RAM is very important. But then, of course, one of the things that I learned early on in forensics when I started was I would hear people say, examiners that I was learning from, capture the RAM, capture the RAM,
Yes.
capture the RAM. So I would capture the RAM. Then what?
Then what?
Then what do I do with it?
What do we? Yeah, we have it.
So
what
I
do we
have
do
it,
with
but then what do I do with it?
Right.
I never understood that. And so we have this RAM capture analysis class, and the point of the class is not necessarily it's a deep dive into RAM, but it's not a deep dive into RAM from the standpoint of something like a network intrusion or network analysis class, right? This class is tailored more towards your investigators that are trying to find good artifacts out of RAM, trying to use it to get into other things,
Yep.
trying to find things that will help their case. Sometimes looking for malware and things like that can be pertinent, but that's not the focus of our class. And so we're starting to go through the RAM and analyze it and pull things out pertinent to investigations, but we're not going in and manually reconstructing pages and things
Okay,
like
yeah.
that. So we definitely go over and understand, address translation and the virtual addressing space and things like that, so that we understand what's going on in the background, but we're not spending the entire day tracing entire process ID trees and things like that. So from an importance standpoint, the RAM, because everything traverses it, we can get a lot of good things out of that. And then sometimes it's a little bit of a mystery, like I kind of mentioned before. people may capture it, but then not know what to do with it. And there's a lot of good stuff in there.
Do you have a software? Is there software specific for it, or you teach it the old, you got to learn how to do this manually, command line type situation? What's
Yes, all of it.
all of it?
So there's lots of great RAM capture tools that are out there. Some of them are, many of them are GUI, graphical user interface tools that are great. We actually go through and validate and test all of those.
Okay. Yep.
Because not only the tools work great, but then one of the things that we're looking at are things like, well, if you're capturing the RAM, you're now putting this tool up into RAM, injecting the driver to pull the RAM, and so then you have smear in the RAM.
Yep.
So then we start looking at things like, okay, which one has the smallest footprint, right? Which ones are the fastest and have the smallest footprint? So maybe those, I'm not saying one tool over the other, but that's definitely something to consider from a validation standpoint. Then we, of course, use command line tools as well in case you want to script things, which also helps. And then we look at some other hardware tools as well that can be used to pull RAM as well.
So we talked about that. One of the biggest things, they best practices has been around forever with computers. Cell phones are a little bit different. For you to get a RAM capture, you're number one, you're working with a live machine. Number two, you're breaking rule number one. You're putting something into the computer. You're connecting to the computer, right? So it's no longer you've tainted a sterile environment, I guess is that the word I'm looking for. So is there any residuals or timestamps on the computer affected by this or anything along those lines?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you have your RAM capture tools that you're going to use or any tools that you're going to use in a live environment, the way we teach is you're going to put those onto an external drive.
Yep.
A sterile external drive, pardon me. And we're going to note and document the times that we're putting that in.
Yep.
And then we also teach that we're going to document the volume serial numbers beforehand and the device itself. Because it's going to be introduced in the computer into things like the registry and typically the Windows event logs and things like that. And so there will be traces of it. However, from a best practice standpoint, the question then becomes, if you have a computer that's on and running and you just pull the proverbial plug, if it's a desktop, or just hold the power down to shut it down, something like a laptop, now the problem you run into is all of that good evidence that was up in RAM, you've destroyed.
It's gone.
And so then the question can also come back the other way. Are the minimal changes that you're making
Absolutely.
by
Yes.
inputting that drive better than destroying everything that's in RAM? And I would 100% say that you're much better off collecting the RAM if you have the ability to,
Yes.
than destroying that and not collecting it. Because then the argument can easily be made the other way. Investigator, you had the ability to collect the RAM and you chose not to.
Not right.
But all the evidence that exonerates my client was up in RAM.
Right.
So it can go both ways.
Yeah.
And so from a best practice standpoint, the way that I look at it is, short of, if I have the ability to capture RAM and other volatile data from the system, because there's, in the order of volatility, network connections and running processes are actually higher than RAM.
Right.
So typically we'll actually teach collecting running processes and network connections before dumping RAM. And that's not my opinion, that's based on SWGD.
SWGD, okay.
So that's their guidance out there as far as it goes. And then obviously collecting the computer once you have RAM. Part of that, of course, is because a lot of encryption keys can be sitting up in RAM, which we
Yes.
heavily focus on in the class.
So that was my next question for you. Well, number one, preservation of evidence should always be paramount
Right.
to anything, right? That they teach you that at the academy,
Right.
No matter what. If you're a cop and you're walking by a drug dealer's house, you just happen to see that he's, stuffing bags of cocaine into a bag. You don't have a search warrant for it, but he sees you. You got to get to that evidence before he flushes everything down the toilet. And then you got to deal with the search warrant issues later. But the preservation of evidence, and I always use drug evidence scenes, much like digital forensics, because evidence is pretty much always evidence in some
One of the
form or
few
fashion.
situations I can think of where if you have the ability to collect RAM that you may not want to is if you see something on the system that's actively destroying data, like they're running a program to overwrite data or something like that. Okay, then you got a choice to make, but otherwise.
So I'm glad you brought it up. So the big thing is, the new Windows machines that start with Windows 10, the BitLocker, right? Mm-hmm. So you got a machine that's on, you turn that machine on, you have a machine that's on and you can go through it if you wanted to, but as soon as that machine turns off, if you don't have the BitLocker key, it's, you pretty much got a giant flat paperweight. So do you have...
I don't know about that.
Well, for all intents and purposes, you're not totally screwed, but it's life's going to be hard for you for a minute, I think.
Not in RCA, it's not.
So see, this is why I'm talking to this guy, because he has all the answers to my questions. Let's talk about, you talked encryption keys, the BitLocker encryption keys to the machine, to anything, any.
So I'm not gonna let all of the secret sauce out for the class.
Right, because you still got to get people.
Yeah, I mean, you still got to come to the class and learn it. But what I can tell you is we teach. We stay very well versed on research topics as far as the newest ways to get into different things, and we do teach in the class 3 different ways currently to bypass TPM BitLocker machines. Some obviously work better than others depending on the circumstances, but we do teach 2-3 different ways that if you have, in a forensically sound manner, let's say you have this laptop that is powered off, you get in the lab, you take out the drive, you image it, and it's TPM'd in BitLocker.
Right.
Okay. So one of the things that we stress in that class is, okay, in that situation, what do you do? Well, the first thing that we're going to do is take the evidence drive, your original drive, put it away, that's your clean evidence, we're not touching that.
Correct.
But we are going to make a clone of that drive and put the clone back in the laptop, right? Your original evidence is staying, you have your EO1s, they're all clean, and we're gonna work off a clone. If we make changes to the clone, it's not a big deal. It's not original,
correct?
Right? It's our working copy, just like we would make a working copy of an EO1, it's just a working copy of a physical drive.
Right.
Same concept. And then we're gonna use that with different methods, different, we'll call them attacks, I guess, to get at that recovery key. We've had a lot of success getting recovery keys for TPM BitLocker laptops using different methods. So some of our methods are hardware based. We're using things like PCI cards and things like that to use direct memory attacks to get in and pull the recovery keys that way. It's a lot of fun. The students really enjoy it, and it can be very effective. Just last week, week before I came down here to teach, I had a nearby agency, Jason Agency, they brought me a TPM BitLocker laptop, asked for help getting into that, and they had already made a clone of the drive because I've done this for them, they know how it rolls.
Right.
So they bring me the computer with the clone, and about 10 minutes later I said, here's your recovery key, have a nice day.
Nice.
So they're pretty excited about that. And so we teach different ways of doing that, some hardware, some software. One of the different things about RCA as well is because some of this hardware can be very difficult for agencies to purchase, just because sometimes ordering hardware from different places, depending on where it's coming from, can be a chore, especially for federal partners and things like that. Sure. So in this class, one of the things that we actually decided to do last year that was very, very popular is most IACIS classes you come to, you get a laptop to take home with you. Well, RCA, you don't take home a laptop with you, but you take all the hardware home, the cards, the adapters, everything else, so that you can do all of this at home and you don't have to then try and replicate the equipment once you get there.
Good. Students love toys. They like, we could blame NCFI for spoiling us all, right? So everybody, it's like, when I was coming up to be a police officer in the turn of the century, you looked for departments that had take-home cars, right? There was only, usually sheriff's office started with them, and then finally the municipalities went in because people got spoiled with the take-home car method. And it's just the same thing. When you go to training, you're almost, you're almost expected, like, oh, do I get toys? Do I get to bring home toys with this training? So that's good. So you're telling me there's more to RAM capture than just FTK Imager.
There's more. There's a lot more to RAM capture than FTK Imager.
I have to sign up for this. I just have to sign up for this class because I feel I'm a little bit behind the curve on this one.
One of the things that we love about this class and trying to keep it up to date, right, is encryption is not going away.
No,
it's only become more of a problem over the years.
Correct.
And so we focus on trying to get RAM captures, trying to understand that, and we do some really cool things with analysis in RAM, pulling artifacts and things like that out that are your push button tools are great, right? They're easy to use. The training on them is great, but as we all know as examiners, they can't do everything and they miss things sometimes, right? And so we use some advanced techniques. Many people are familiar with volatility. We do some volatility work and that sort of thing. And then we teach a couple other ones like memproc and things like that people are less familiar with, but do some really, really neat things. And we've done a lot of testing and validating with those. And there's, have you ever put RAM into one of your paid tools and processes and carved it and things like that? And
no, I have not, but
okay.
I don't think no. Oh wait, no. You're talking about the RAM capture itself.
Yeah, you get the RAM
I thought you meant the
capture.
physical stick.
No,
so I was like, no, I don't think there's much would be on there.
You take the RAM capture, you put it into a paid tool, and have it process it, and you'll get a few things. Some do better than others, but say you get images, right? And the images you're carving the first part of the image, right? But it can't reconstruct it, and so you'll just get carved pieces, that sort of thing. Some of the processes that we use that once you learn them are actually pretty straightforward. It's reconstructing those address translation tables in that virtual memory space. And so we pull out and carve out all kinds of full files, full images, full documents. We've pulled out Word documents that were encrypted just from RAM that were resident, things like that.
That's pretty good. So you're running, how many students do you run in the class typically?
We cap at 24.
Cap at 24. So that means you got to set up as the instructors probably 24 images to keep working off of? Or is it different than like
it's different than a lot of classes. So 24 different student computers, things like that we're working off of. It is a little chaotic.
Yes, that's I'm thinking that. Yeah.
We definitely break things.
Yeah.
We take things apart. It's not uncommon to have a couple blue screens, but that's part of the reality of the class.
That's true. True.
We come in and tell the students, you're going to break things in here. Part of that's intentional because sometimes, having gone through many, many classes and years of training myself, I sometimes get a little frustrated when you go to a class and everything works perfectly. And then you get back to the lab and it doesn't work. You can't make it work. And so we kind of intentionally structure the class to, hey, you're going to break things and figure it out because you're going to have to figure it out when you get home. So.
Right. The class itself is 1 week, correct?
It is a 1 week
through
class.
Friday?
Yep, it's a 1 week class.
What's a loose outline on the class, like starting from day one to Friday?
So just a rough outline. The first day, first intro, we kind of course, walk them through the computers, what's on there. We run a dual boot system because we do quite a bit in Linux as well. Not a deep dive into Linux for investigations, just a usage as a tool. And then we jump right into some of the bypassing the Windows lock screen systems and how to get past the Windows logon screen, how to pull RAM from these locked machines, those sorts of things. And then we jump into analyzing a lot of the encryption. Not encryption, the captures themselves, pulling RAM from live running machines, the different ways to do that. Doing a lot of RAM capturing, comparing the tools, validating the different various tools and how they perform and how they work. Then we get into analysis and what we can pull out of there with paid tools, with free tools like volatility, with things like memproc, and diving in and what we can pull out of different RAM captures. We'll pull full volume encryption keys for BitLocker out of there, and then do things like, because in IACIS, the paid tools are great, like Passware, I think you mentioned earlier, but not everybody can afford those. So some of the things that we teach are, if you don't have some of the paid tools, how can you do this without them?
Yes.
So we'll actually go mount a BitLocker volume into Linux and then put the VMK back into it and mount it in an unencrypted state so that you can just image it in an unencrypted state through Linux like a DD or something like that. So one way to do it. And then we finish out the week with a lot of password cracking. And again, going back to that, how do we get to this information? Sometimes we can pull it out of RAM, sometimes we can't. But if we can't, how do we start getting into that information as well? And so we work with creating some custom dictionaries, pulling other things like that, spend some time in Hashcat, things like that. And so generally the reviews that we get from our students are very positive.
Sure.
I don't say that as the chair, right? They're the ones putting the reviews, but the reviews in general have been that the students find the class very, very pertinent to their day-to-day investigations and very useful for the issues that they're running into.
This class actually sounds amazing, right? And I don't say that for, most of the classes I know, but this is a very much needed class, I do believe. And I'm not just saying that because you're the guest on the podcast. This is, and just, you said earlier, encryption isn't going away. In fact, it's only going to be more advancing. So this it would be a priority class.
So while I was early in our conversation, one of the things I told you, right, is as I started our lab, I went to our administration and said, hey, digital forensics, this stuff, it's not going away.
Right.
I really want to get this going. I think it's important. And guess what? 10 years later, 11 years later, it hasn't gone away.
It has not.
It's gotten to the point where if we have a serious felony case, our prosecutor's office, they expect us to have the computer, the phone, something on the case.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
There's places where if you don't have that, they don't want to prosecute it.
No.
And that's the point that we've gotten to. Well, in a similar way, we've gotten to a point where most of your Windows 11 laptops are all coming encrypted from the factory.
Absolutely.
So encryption's not going away. It's going to continue to be a problem.
Yes.
And so the development of this class and where it came from was I originally started doing a lot of CSAM cases. That's kind of where it got me to.
Yep.
And one of the big focuses is continuing to be able to, do CSAM cases, protecting children, and getting into those evidence devices so that we can continue to successfully prosecute those cases.
Yes. I'm telling you, this class, I'm digging this class. So. Oh, that's good. It's a good class. It sounds good. Prescott Valley, Arizona. What's there? You said you're in the mountains. So what's if you're on your lunch break, you go and get like a coyote burger or something?
Oh man,
what's
a coyote burger. No.
What's the cuisine in Prescott? Wait, so it's Prescott Valley, but you're in the mountains. So I guess you're in the valley in the mountains.
We're a little over an hour north of the Phoenix metropolitan area, but you leave Phoenix Metro and you're going uphill the whole way.
The whole way.
So we're about a mile high almost.
Okay.
Up in that area. So we've got some good elevation.
Yeah.
A lot of mountains, a lot of pine forests, pine trees. It's a rural area. I love it. Raising a family there. The whole metro area, if you want to call it that, where I work, we've got a couple of cities right next to each other, 3-4 cities. So that whole kind of metro area is about 125,000, 130,000. It's a good size, but a lot of ranching in that area.
Sure.
A lot of outdoors, hunting, fishing, camping, that sort of thing. So as far as we do have snow, the nice thing in the winter, you get to February. If you want to go skiing, you drive an hour north to Flagstaff, and you can go skiing. If you drive an hour south to Phoenix, you can go golfing.
Golfing.
Take which one you want in February. A lot of so Mexican food is pretty common there.
I figured.
At home, we just call it food.
Food, yeah. I figured a lot of, a ton of Mexican food out there.
Yeah, it's a great place. It's a great place to work. I love Arizona. A lot of support from the community. Very supportive community. Great prosecutor's office.
Good.
It's very supportive. So, it works well. I like it there.
Awesome. Philip, listen, thanks for being on this podcast to talk about RAM capture analysis. As I can't say it enough. The way you described your class and what it can do for us as forensic examiners is much needed. It's 100% necessary. So I appreciate it. All right,
Absolutely.
We'll be seeing you later on. Philip Muchinsky, everybody, Prescott Valley, Arizona. I'm Farand, Wasiak. Have a great day. Thank you.